Okay. Hello, everyone. I am so happy to have you here. Ukumbwa, I'll let you take over in a second while you get situated. This is the ancestors of the four directions. What is it like to live in my skin? Part 4. Ukumbwa, are you ready to come on and introduce yourself as my co-host?
Thank you so much, Mari, and thank you for all who are here this afternoon, I believe morning also. Thank you for your presence. My name is Ukumbwa Sauti, and I am a initiated elder in the Dagara tradition from West Africa, from Burkina Faso. I'm in the Water Clan, and I am speaking to you from the lands of the Massachusetts, the Wampanoag and Nipmuc and Pequot, in what we now know as New England in the United States of America, settler colony. And I am here today, and thank you for having me along with you. Back to you, Mari. Thank you so much.
Hello, and my name is Mari Fix McEwen, Chenevid Seneta Bofush Koyaventus from the Yew Tree Clan Ewing. And my lineage lands are Kilfinnan and Ulster, and I'm residing in the unceded territories, the Tongva and Chumash tribal peoples. And I was recognized as an elder for my people in 2015 by Maestro Hermano Vidal and his Council of Peruvian Incan Elders. And I will pass back to Ukumbwa.
It is, can unmute. Yep. Oh, here we go. Okay, great. Thank you so much, Mari. We'd like to welcome you to the last day of the 99 Days of Peace Conference, where we continue our 4th workshop on this series, Deep Healing Racism Together. Here we continue our deep dive into colonialism, capitalism, and racism, and how they are connected and have jeopardized our lives and the ecosystems of the planet. By the way, if you are listening to this workshop live or via video now, please like and subscribe to our new YouTube channel, Ancestors of the Four Directions. The link will be in the chat. It just showed up there, and you can also find it on YouTube. This workshop is dedicated to the within, without, connecting the dots, and an understanding that one needs to see any issue in context of the whole to understand its roots. It is this lack of understanding, though, that allows us to make errors in judgment and not perceive from a true place of wisdom. This is what is called compartmentalization, a very dangerous narrative and action within European colonialism. Please trust this experiential process, if you will. Even though the chat will not be open until the end of the workshop due to technical reasons, this workshop will have space for you to share your feelings and insights in a sharing circle after our elders speak. So please make note of anything that comes up for you, and as you are an important part of the whole and the solution. And a big thank you to John Raymer and the Sign Network for your support. And back to you, Mari. Pass back to you.
We will now begin with purifying and sanctifying the space. And when Olarisha Techise Ajay calls you to call in your ancestors and mentors, please actively call them into your circle and our circle here. We now open the ancestors of the four directions. We start with a purification and blessing ceremony, and I pass to Ava.
Creator, grandmothers, grandfathers, this is your granddaughter Wamadi Tawia speaking, welcoming all here from the four directions into the sacred circle. We cleanse and purify ourselves in a good way with the clearing power of the cedar medicine and the gentleness of the sage. As the earth and fire join each other and transmute themselves, invite these healing medicines to completely wash over your body, mind, and spirit, bathing every thought, word, and deed brought into this sacred space and beyond as we explore the deep topics at hand. Visualize the washing away and clearing of anything heavy and outmoded that you've come and carried with you. Anything you no longer wish to hold on to, release it all, bless it all in a kind and gentle way. May you all feel lighter and brighter and clear to communicate in this purified circle of intention and creation. All my relations.
My relations. And now I pass to Cynthia to call in the directions.
Calling in the east, Udher, August air, the element of air. Calling in the south, Yeshgard, August Dochan, the element of fire. Calling in the west, Yeter, August Ishke, and the element of water. Calling in the north, Wishgard, August Dune, and the element of earth. Calling in the above and below, Huas, August Tish. Calling in the out, within, and through, Amach, Isti, August Fridge. And I pass to the center.
Now I call in Chise to call in the ancestors and the mentors.
Mitutu ona tutu ile tutu tutu lara. We give praise, cool water to freshen the road, to freshen the house, to freshen the issue of the transformation. Emi majalonyo mofori bale foloru moju baba banwa moju bayanwa moju baba batia iku orisha bye to. We give praise and we give thanks to the owner of the day. We give praise and thanks to the owner of the four directions. We call in all the spirits and all of our ancestors to be with us here in this moment in time, so that we may make what we do and the actions that we take now that come out of good character. Good character is everything. Good character is the foundation of our being and the foundation of all of our actions. Mojuba, we give praise to our ancestors who brought us to this point, who brought us this far. Ibai Baitona. As I say Mojuba, we wish for you to call on your ancestors. We wish for you to call on your teachers. We wish for you to call on your mentors. Mojuba. For your fathers and your mothers and your elders. Mojuba, for your mentors and your teachers and your preceptors. Mojuba, for those who all have gone before you historically, and for your egbe, those of your kind. If you are a writer, for those writers who have gone before you. If you are a teacher, for those teachers who have gone before you. If you are a rocket scientist, for those rocket scientists who have laid the foundation for your current rocket science. Modukwe, ashe, 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 sheo. And I pass to the center.
I now call to Deborah to pray us in.
Kanu de kosa beneshi kwe nishnagas, makon dundam ge keko gechidai kwe. Gejawe namenen gechimana do. Eja nikka de big doyan getina gigu. Gejawe namenen gijas. Eja mashkawaji yan. Gejawe namenem da big gizik. Gekikanu Amawe yang zaga diginyan, Gejawana minyan, Mashkik, Asia debit zigayan, Wenji bemada de zayan, Api, Jawen name wayan, Jawen name wen diwan, Api zagawayan, Zaga nagawa, Api nujuma yang. Nujamo anga dewa. Api ane wineme guyan. And away na medallion. Na dama wishino nam daga nungum. Nagamata wishinamam daga nungum. Nana ishinana daga nungum. Nana isananishinam daga gichimanadu. We are blessed by you, Creator. You who connects all being. We are blessed by you, Son. You give us light and strength. We are blessed by you, Moon. You teach us the importance of reflection. We are blessed by you, land and water. Your circulation supports our living. We are blessed. We bless others. As we are loved, we love others. As we are healed, we healed others. As we are related to you, we are related to one another. Help us all now. Sing to us all now. Repair us all now. Bring peace to all our souls, Creator. This is a prayer by Margaret Oden. I wanted to give her credit for this prayer. My name and my teachings are from David Crushane, Nigani Akianini, who recently left us, and from the Turtle Lodge in Sakim. I am coming to you from Ho Chunk lands. And I apologize if I did not pronounce everything perfectly. I'm working on learning the language. Miigwech miu nakanikana natakoyasin.
Under the divine law of our primordial nature, the truth, love, justice, and harmony, the understanding of the law of interdependence, I hereby open the ancestors of the four directions. This confluence is a continuation of what is essential in ourselves. Here we seek to find, make aware, and embody the truth of our very nature, the clearing of all delusions and the caretakership of the life we are in service to. In this congruence, we attain peace in ourselves and in the quadrants. Hello and welcome, my relations. Now, as we listen to the elders that will be coming up, please listen deeply with your hearts so we may open the door to healing between us all, knowing that even if our discussion triggers wounds, defense, feeling misunderstood, or pain, that what is arising is a signal that Spirit is calling these things up for reevaluation. Let us look deeply into the mirror of what our brothers and sisters experience in compassion and understanding, seeing in it the reflection of our own hurt, pain, needs, wants, and aspirations, knowing there may be obstacles to overcome and misunderstandings. With love, all things are possible. So I dedicate this prayer and this workshop to this process, because with enough love, we can get through anything to understanding and common ground. If we look boldly at the shadow within us and in the outside world, we may find that it no longer holds power over us, and that we free ourselves from any illusions and subconscious patterning. I call to the heart within us that knows no fear, that which seeks to set things into harmony, that dares to walk and live by the path of greatness for the healing of earth and all her peoples. May we look to this heart and know that together we have the power, no matter what it may look like or what we have been told. And we have this power to step into this alignment with life and each other for the good of the whole. And may we have the courage to take that path and make it a reality. Please feel yourself expanding into the web of life, holding hands with each other of like heart and intention, forming a new way that is in alignment with love and life itself. your original nature. I now place our individual and group prayers for love and healing into the fire as we begin. Bless these prayers, Creator, Duhas, all my relations. And I pass to Ukumbwa.
Thank you, Mari. As we listen and participate in this workshop, stereotypes and generalizations may be referred to like white people do this or black people do that. Know that these generalizations are markers of tendencies in the society, that we are working with them to make some headroom into larger issues. Please hold an open stance while this happens, knowing that there's a greater goal that will be addressed, and we have our eye on the big picture here. Before we continue with our workshop, I want to introduce that we'll have a modality of sharing circles. Its purpose is to give voice to our needs and ideas, knowing that any erroneous ideas presented by participants will eventually gain clarity from dialogue and reflection, so we can eventually come to a place of true understanding. If you are triggered or offended as some of the material presented or shared may be disturbing, I invite you to notice what need you may have that has triggered the feeling. As an example, if you feel that you are being directly accused of something, you might find that you have a need for fairness or to be seen for who you are. Make a note of this. Likewise, if you hear something that triggers you in what your brothers and sisters and family share, I invite you to look into the heart of what they are expressing and why. What are they needing by saying what they have said? Compassion, consideration, understanding, historical clarity, fairness, to be seen, safety for their children and the lives of the people in their culture. As a special note, if you find yourself feeling extremely triggered or overwhelmed, be sure and take care of yourself. Only you know what you need. If there is a deep need for support, we have placed a document from our licensed counseling team in the chat with resources for you to access. And I pass back to Mari.
You know, our brothers and sisters on this planet are hurting. And I have the recognition that if I didn't take action, that I'm complicit on some level. The hurt of one is the hurt of all. We are all intrinsically linked. We are all responsible for each other. We can't just let each other sink into the pit thinking, oh, well, it wasn't me, and go on about our daily business. That is not love from an Indigenous standpoint and from a heart standpoint. Something inside dies when it looks away. Something shuts down. Going along with the society and the atrocities is perpetuation. So here we are. What are we going to do about all this? How are we going to recreate this world so we can all thrive and be in harmony with the ecosystem? Let's explore, let's cry, let's get real with each other. Let's cultivate the deepest relationships where we can truly hear each other and meet all our needs, where we heal each other from all the shame, pain, and dysfunction, even back through our forefathers. No one left behind, not even the earth and her creatures. A true, unadulterated act of love to end all this madness. Step by step, we move into our path of connecting the dots and putting things in context. We now move into how and why the degradation of this planet directly is tied into racism, colonialism, and capitalism, and what we can do about it. Our first elder, esteemed Indigenous Elder Brother Kunkanku, I call on you to share your wisdom on this issue. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you so much, Mari. I am Kunkanku, from the Bafut Kingdom in the northwest region of Cameroon. I founded an eco village there and was initiated through a rite of passage into the Council of Elders at the age of 13. And since then, I've been holding youth circles, women's circles, and men's circles. But I'm at the moment speaking to you from Portugal because of the war happening in my country. And connecting here, I found a special spirit when the ancestors were invited, and placing my feet firmly on the ground, I could feel myself connecting to each of you and firmly feeling the container that is this Zoom room. And I'm happy to be here. Maybe I'd like to share a little bit about when I first heard directions of the ancestors. It struck me that is being said in this part of the world. Because often I hear spirituality, it's sometimes about religion, but sometimes just about beliefs of the people, and not often connected to what we know about the natural systems that created us. So in my work, I started to turn the listening circles of young people, and especially the women, into some modern tools of transformation in the community. So I founded the Bafut Eco Village as a way to connect one of the acupuncture points of sustainable education. Just mention that this kingdom hosts one of the oldest grass houses in West Africa, and it's named one of the UNESCO Heritage Centers. So I was using this concept of education, of initiating young people through a rite of passage into adulthood, because we based it on something called a love economy. And that is why I felt that it was useless talking about love if we cannot connect to each other's soul. And I started to really bring the same initiation, which was about honoring the holy places, the holy shrine of the spiritual forest, which usually it's a place that humans have not treaded. So it remains in its power. And I hear the fire that is also the fire of the sun. That is what we carry in our hearts. So talking circles were a form and remain a form of aligning our hearts to our lives' divine purpose. So I see in this Zoom container, and I begin to realize in my heart we cannot travel the spiritual path without realizing the heavy responsibility of guiding the next generation. Because this path is intergenerational and it is also intercultural, as is represented in this room. And the major thing that moves me now, not to dwell on the polarization of the world, where we still use the same terminologies to describe change. North, South, global North, rich, underdeveloped, and all this polarization that continues. But in here, we realize one thing, that it goes beyond the skin color. So I see this call and the directions to the ancestors and from the ancestors, which converge in our hearts through our skin, no matter the color of our skin, that we can shift these ways of looking at the world, maybe using some of the African ways. We are aware of how Ubuntu has helped Africa to go through slavery, through colonization, and is living through the subjugation of exploitation of resources and repartition of Africa. So I'm called in this sense of responsibility to share that I experienced what I experienced in this room. Happiness, peace, love, fulfillment, that we can actually connect to the ways of leading in order to shift regenerative education and mindsets. So we have all the tools in the room, and I'm excited that this ceremony of fire is just a seed that we are sowing, and to remind us that it is the most vulnerable young people who do not yet find a voice that we are also called to serve. And the women who, by the right of the ancestors, are the educators, and those who care about food and well-being of the children. And this is the future. Maybe I like to stop here and being African, speaking from the Western perspective of education through Zoom and not in the spiritual forest, that some of the philosophical and historical underpinnings of the magic of change in the global South, we still call it global South, is some form of South-South cooperation. There's been no dialogue where Africans require a visa to speak to their neighbor, where we don't know what countries really mean and flags and anthems, because this arbitrary separation has killed the soul of Africa. So it's maybe our shared intention of really appreciative awareness amongst us, and to maybe authentic integrity and transparency in our communication, because we still use languages that are foreign to other people, and we feel that we are speaking and understanding the same concepts, such that if we have this shared intention on communication and creative responsibility in what we are doing, then we engage some form of impeccable agreement in those who are called to trust us, and invite their civic participation to create the regenerative ripples within the Pachamama container that is the life force of truly who we are.
Oh, thank you so much, Elder Kunkanku. There are so many key elements to what you've said, and I'm just going to touch on to illuminate again a couple points to your sharing here, and the importance that you raised for us about how we as adults interface with youth, and what seeds are we planting to bring forth the fruiting, the flowering of tomorrow, of new days, and I should say even today. I have heard for years how we adults like to say children are the future, and I began to say children are the present. And I think some of the work that you are doing, Elder Kunkanku, is showing us this, that the youth that we say are tomorrow are here today, and our investment must be in them. And I so appreciate the circles that you have with youth, with women, men, in that sense, in that cultural milieu of the forest of humanity, bringing that life force back into us, helping to support the continued growth of Ubuntu. And as you are demonstrating, and I remind us about the necessity of work that we all have, the need to do work. In your work with the Barefoot Eco Village, that I would hope we would all look more deeply into and learn to support. This is one of the ways that we can change the dynamic of the dominator, destructive, exploitative system that European colonialism has created throughout the world, is to support these things that this elder is doing, the Barefoot Eco Village, and its work in seeding people together to grow the beauty of our future lives, and to, again, I love the concept of feet on the ground, that Barefoot Eco Village, that we are here right now, and that we are the ones to do this work. And I feel such profound importance in the work you're doing, Elder Kunkanku, and we thank you for the words and really manifested things that we can connect to and support in this moment. Thank you so much for that. And please, everyone, please take note of some of these things as we come into the sharing circles later. There are many things. We could have a conversation for a week just on what our elder shared with us just right now. So please take note of things that you may want to bring up later. Thank you. And back to you, Mari.
And Elder Kunkanku has to catch a plane, so he may be here for a few more minutes, but he might be leaving soon. So If you have anything else to add, just let me know. Would you like to say anything else, or would we go to our next speaker? Kunkaku?
I like to say that I am honored to be able to speak among elders and people of culture. I've noticed how we are all very grounded, and this is opening my heart to believe that actually empathy exists, and that those who continue to have apathy about collaboration between the Europe, America, and Africa, and Asia, that through our work, they will soon realize that actually the change that they are asking for is underway. I will listen in for a more 15 minutes, and we'll continue to work following the principles that I have learned here and those that I find on the website.
Thank you so much. We are so happy to have you as a contributor. Esteemed Elder Patricia Ann Davis, please give us your insights about racism, colonialism, capitalism, and what we can do about this, and how racism, colonialism, and capitalism are tied together. How does that work? And I know that Spirit might tell you to speak on something else, so I want to just give you the floor, and let's let Spirit run the show. Thank you, and please introduce yourself.
Welcome. And thank you, Mari. It's wonderful to see all of you. Thank you for the invitation to be visible and to educate from the oral tradition. This oral tradition is the indigenous wisdom and knowledge from what the labels that were called quote, American Indians. And I don't really consider myself American or Indian because I was born on the Navajo reservation and we're not even calling ourselves Navajo either. So the place I want to start is to greet you with a heart-to-heart hug from my fireplace to the hearth of your home. Ya'ate, ya'ate shik'e shidane analso. This greeting is translating to everything that's good and beautiful and true for us is all I speak. My spiritual family and all of my relatives. And I will introduce myself in our traditional way to inform you of my maternal and paternal bloodline lineage and the affirmation of the my spiritual sacred self-identity as a precious child of Creator within creation simultaneously. We're all governed by the natural order laws that we're calling Hojo, and everyone equally is existing in this all-encompassing concept, or actually reality of holiness and wholeness. So that this is really the fundamental basis of equality. And of course, in my defining racism, speak about how that is deviating from being in harmony and balance with Creator, within creation, with ourselves, and with each other. Gratitude, I'd like to mention that always gratitude to my late father, who initiated me at age 8 and gave me the task. He said, quote, "Undo the thinking that caused our people so much violence and suffering." And now we see in this global crisis that this violence and suffering is impacting and affecting all of us. This context that I'm calling Hojo is a container that we eternally exist in. It's one of oneness. And the reframe process is to affirm that we are existing in an affirmative thinking system. That means in our language, there's no deficient self-image, yet racism is a construct that would attempt to hold us in this belief that we're existing in a deficient self-image, and that they hold the external remediation process out of this deficient self-image into some desired end state that they call civilization or personal redemption or salvation, in which they're the hero savior. And these concepts and terminologies they're not true, and they don't exist in our language. I want to emphasize that there's no such thing as that we're born into something, we're born with something wrong with us. And the process, of course, of colonialization resulting in capitalism is with that intention to perpetuate that belief and hold us so that our land and resources can be exploited. Now, group consensus requires us to come to a place where we're using that power within us to have power with each other. That's what would eliminate racism. That's what would eliminate this conquest that I identify and call empire folly. So capitalism is from colonialism. It's the end, what I call end stage of colonialism, is that we're in this state of conquest. The empire folly is a invasion and genocide and plunder, which is mass murder and mass plunder. And that's the purpose of the construct of why it was created to benefit a few people. Now, I'd like to just briefly describe my own personal experience, having a grandmother during the Trail of Tears who was put into the plantation owner's environment and, of course, raped as the land was being raped as well. And some of the ancestors hid out with the African Americans. And so I have been discriminated against. I have been discriminated for being light complected, for 1/32 of some kind of European, but I always emphasize to tell people, please don't tell anyone. So I'm also in a place where I put the background behind me, that how I've lived in this place where I'm not light enough for these people, or not dark enough for these people. And one of those places was in Sears, when I was a young mother and homemaker. Sears in Scottsdale, Arizona, where there is a road, there is a reservation on one side with all the shacks and outdoor unflushable, and then on the other side, all the high-end housing, large households and grass and golf courses and so on. And Scottsdale is considered, quote, an elite high-end place to live, yet there's a reservation on one side of the road, and I was working part-time during Christmas, where my coworker was complaining about those Indians. And she said, even my dogs don't like the smell of Indians. And she didn't know me. And I said to her, Dorothy, I am Choctaw and Navajo. And within the same breath, in the same sentence, her mouth made all these gyrations. And she said, oh, by the way, Patricia, did you know I'm part Cherokee? And so I just leave it at that. And when I left from there, I did tell the personnel director what I experienced. And of course, it was just like, so what? That's just the way it is, and move on. I did. Now, the question itself about racism and the environmental degradation is that the intent of colonialism is to exploit the land and resources. It is to victimize the people. And so it's synonymous with capitalism, because capitalism is for profit. Everything is for profit. The extraction of natural resources, and then the exporting the natural resources off of quote American Indian reservations. And if you don't know where the Navajo reservation is, it covers 4 states of parts of Utah, Colorado, Arizona, and New Mexico. So I would like to just begin defining racism as a construct that the aristocracy, the elite, that the so-called landowners, well, that came about. The first conflict of interest has to do with the indigenous people stewarding the earth, water, fire, and air for generations and centuries. So we are stewards. And this idea and concept from Europe was brought over that we're not using the land, so we have to steal it and make a killing and resell it. And so that introducing the concept of ownership. So that is still ongoing today, is ownership and stewardship worldwide among indigenous people. And I don't call people I don't call the invaders immigrants or settlers. I just say, when the pirates came, and they're still pirating, continuing to pirate. So that that's just a naming the out of balance condition and identifying the root cause that keeps this being perpetuated into polarizing people into perpetual conflict and warfare that we're witnessing today, that is putting us and the planet and humanity, the environment, in peril. Again, describing my work is not in English, actually. I'm speaking to you in this foreign language put in my mouth, forcing my parents and myself in boarding school that English is the official language. But I don't even exist in the English thinking system because it's a trade and commerce language. I am trained over the years to define, describe, illustrate from a ceremonial language that we call the Neh-Bazad. The Neh-Bazad is the sacred language, ceremonial language of holy people's sacred words. So that in this, what I'm calling indigenous lens, I'll describe the 4 phases of conquest that you might not have the opportunity to hear from our vantage point, from our worldview vantage point. The first one, we're calling it Naholpi. Naholpi is a esoteric word. There's a word Itso, which is like big sleep or a spell. That is the common word for greed, but nahualpi is a word esoterically that's talking about never enough and never satisfied. And in my mother's tribal Choctaw language, that word is noholo, which means stingy. So that we're out of balance. How do we rebalance? That's what my work is that Mari is referring to stay on topic in terms of this particular connection that racism is a construct to benefit by controlling and manipulating the world resources for only a few benefit. And that's a normalized pathology. We think that it's normal that all the resource would go from the poor to the rich, from the bottom to the top, every generation. No, it's going from elder to youth. It's the intergenerational, it's the cross-cultural. It's going, it's inclusive. And this language is inclusive because there's no way to exclude anyone in the humane being family and the earth surface people that we all are existing in this oneness, Hojo. Now, this intention, everything is intention. There's only two, and destructive and death producing for those outcomes, constructive and life affirming for those outcomes. And one is I win, you lose, and winner take all. No, it's I win, you win, and we for our collective survival. So we don't want to give that legacy of death and recruit the young people to the bondage and slavery of everything, if you've noticed, about a trade and commerce language is about control and greed. And so upon European contact was genocide, which instilled fear of survival. Approximately 500 million were genocide on Turtle Island, North and South America. And that instilled fear of survival. This is a transgenerational woundedness and trauma of Indigenous people, meaning that it's carried from one generation to the next, and we're born into it with the being wound within us and the layers. And the next one was conversion, which is a take away and replace. Take away and replace is our sacred self and our sacred place in the universe, and replace it by that deficient self-image. You convert or you die. And that deficient self-image requires the oppression of the outside external remediation process for us to internalize that oppression and then remain in depression, immobilized, believing that there's no solution. And then that instills shame and guilt, and this layer of we're born deficient, something wrong with us, took us out of our sacred place and our sacred self and our sacred place in the universe. The next phase is domesticate us. That means only in the trades. That means we can only serve. We can only serve the system and serve the corporations and serve the businesses for them to make profit off of our labor, and our whole life is only to support their system. That for us, tribal people, over 500 tribal people still here today, existing, we survive, is loss. That loss was through boarding school, taken at very young age, and then also relocation, a one-way busway ticket to the city to be a barber, to be a carpenter, to be a welder, to be a domestic, to be a babysitter, to be a secretary, to be only in the trades. and spend our whole life serving this system. So that loss is unresolved anger, transgenerational unresolved anger, lashed out on those in proximity that we call domestic violence and lateral violence. And that is the animosity and aggression within and toward others as well, because we don't have domination, submission of male and female in our language and culture. There's the equal teamwork of male and female, life giver, nurturer, and the male is the protector, provider, that healthy helping teamwork. And so that loss is the root cause of alcohol and other drug use, to numb the pain and lie to survive. Number 4 is the exploitation and the victimization that our own people learned to perpetrate upon each other. So then number 5, of course, is now. It's the Renaissance. It's those of us who are the bridge, who are revitalizing Indigenous language and culture. And so we can be bigots, we can discriminate among each other, or, quote, white people will say, that's reverse racism. No, there's no such thing as reverse racism. It's a construct they designed to benefit themselves. But we can discriminate, and we can be bigots, and we can be exclusive and think that we're better, more, higher, all these comparative terms that don't even exist in our language, status, and high socioeconomic status, low socioeconomic status, and so on. However, revitalizing our own Indigenous language and culture, I've been that bridge, and I've been that person who is naming and identifying root cause for us to reframe and restore, bring to the next generation that was already mentioned, making sure that our youth are alive and well and know what is healthy helping, not perpetuating the rescuing and enabling, which is unhealthy helping. But the healthy helping is to continue in such a way that brings our own genius gift for right livelihood, to meet our basic needs and our collective survival, because that's our identity, our collective identity as a precious child of Creator within the Hojo of oneness. Thank you all. Ahiahat. Thank you, Shik'e, Shidane, my spiritual family, and all of my relatives.
Elder Patricia, thank you so much. Asante Barka, thank you so much for what you've just offered us. And I would say again, what you've presented us is enough, is vibrant and powerful and foundational enough for us to spend a week of workshops looking into and really working out, if not longer. But thank you for what you've given us in this conception of process of naming, for us to be able to identify, not only from a point of view of Indigenous people and people who have been oppressed by European colonialism and racism, but by European people, as I say, bridge white people too, to be able to see what has happened under their, if you will, I don't want to say tutelage, under their power, under their observation, under their presence, in their name. These kinds of things that have happened, to be able to name these points, help us all to understand the steps to remediate the colonial and racist and patriarchal and anti-earth, anti-Indigenous criminality that the system represents. And you know, your speaking brought me up to this just kind of a statement that I would just like to share. As you talk about imbalance and harm, and I think the word balance is really important as we understand, you know, this conception of indigenous thought and indigenous life and culture and how long it has been developing, which says something about our integral nature of understanding balance, of understanding human relationship to the animals, to the environment, all the elements. But the thought that came to my mind is that we cannot live in peace and love, and we often say those words with great ease. Oh, I'm about peace, I'm about love, I'm about harmony. But we cannot live in peace and harmony when dehumanization and desacralization of the world around us, of our sacred earth, is a central feature of the dominant anti-culture. And I want us to understand that in you know, if we can call in all of the things that Elder Patricia just offered us, in understanding the nature of what we have here now. One of the things that came up for me is that the things that we are seeing, the things that we are experiencing right now, are not what has been, and are not what should be. As people oppressed by European colonialism and racism, we are always struggling against the concrete of oppression. And you know, one of my favorite visual metaphors is that blade of grass that comes through the concrete. That is the life of the indigenous and the oppressed peoples underneath European colonialism. We're always cracking through that concrete and coming into to the light of the day, the sun, the power of that. We're always struggling against that. And for people who embody, you know, European culture and white culture, it's your job to help break that up. Is break that up. We have to break up these systems that hold back the indigenous fruition of life and culture and balance that Elder Patricia speaks so beautifully to. And we thank you so much for your sharing in this moment. And back to you, Mari. Please.
Cynthia, will you please put up the sharing circle rules on the screen? While she is doing that, for anyone who came in late, if you feel you are in need of emotional assistance during our workshop, there is a document from our credentialed counseling team in the chat. And let's see here. And it'll provide resources for you to access. And please repost that document, Martin, if you can. And we'll also put some links for our mailing list and a reciprocity donation link into the chat also. So you can make a gift towards the ancestors in reciprocity if you are called to. We now will head into a sharing circle with our participants here in the circle. And as we head into this sharing circle, remember that this is an exploration in dialogue where you don't need to get it right, but rather where we explore the topic and our impressions together. This is not about cancel culture. Okay, so I just want to get that across here. Remember that any erroneous ideas, like Ukumbwa said, will be eventually gained clarity, because as we talk, we'll start to understand where we hold erroneous beliefs. And this happens naturally from reflection and dialogue. So Cynthia, please introduce yourself and then go over the guidelines for the circle. And I will, after she does that, I will tell you what the discussion question is. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mari, and expressing deep gratitude to our elders who shared their truth telling, and really welcoming all our relations here to join in and be part of the solution and take some of the seeds that have been planted here and really take this time to process them and share your thoughts and feelings. And for those willing to join us in discussion, if you click on reactions, and in the reactions menu, there's a raise hand button. If you click on that so that we know you would like to speak, and introduce yourself with your name only, please, leaving out affiliation. And if one person could share at a time, refraining from interrupting others, and speaking directly from your heart and from your own experience, letting go of the desire to commenting on other people's shares. I encourage you while others are speaking to actively listen with love and compassion, and refrain from using that time to be in your head thinking about, well, what am I going to say? How is this going to sound? Really be present for all of our speakers. And having an open mind, open heart, being open to different perspectives, and showing respect to all others, and no criticizing or putting down other speakers. And we will have share for about 1 minute per person. We want to make sure that we have equal time, that everyone has an equal place here. And we'll, if there's time left over after everyone who would like to speak has an opportunity, then we can always go to a second round if there are more that people would like to share.
Great. Well, our question will be, what came up for you when you hear the elders speak, or you heard the elders speak? So it can be anything. Remember, this is a safe space, and we will support you to work through anything that you would like to speak about. So I hand back to Cynthia to call on people.
And again, for those who would like to speak, clicking on in the reactions menu, the raise hand bar. And we have Ms. Amani. If you could unmute yourself, please.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. I think my answer to the question is gratitude. Gratitude for the space to for your voice to be heard, for the actualization and respect of the spiritual realms and the ones and zeros, the physical realms, the heart-centered realms, the collaborative nature of this communication. And I mean, personally, I've been praying for conversations and showing up to conversations like this for a long time. And I just want to, that's all I really want to say. I just know that I'm back here over here in North Carolina with my support. Hands up. Thank you for what you're doing. And if I can be of service in any way, please reach out. Blessed be.
Thank you so much for voicing your support. If you'd like to get on our email list to get more information about other events, that will be in the chat with our Ancestors of Four Directions website. And now I'd like to turn over to Danny Turk.
I too want to express my gratitude. I've attended the first session and missed the last two. And I've never experienced a circle like this. I'm white-bodied, identify as Jewish, and one of my Indigenous friends reminds me of the genocide of my heritage that I'm learning to connect to. And I am on a pretty steep journey in my anti-racist journey, and my racism, and my learning about my racism, and in my work to be an ally. And for me, this space is I think the spiritual element of this space, the trans-global element of this space, and ritual, and the authenticity. And I don't know that there's anything I don't resonate with that I've heard today. I'm so grateful to the elders who are here. Just such respect for your presence and your wisdom. And really appreciating the need to be centering youth. I spent most of my career working with youth, and I'm not currently right now. And I appreciate that reminder. Thank you.
And thank you, Danny, for your sharing. And as a great granddaughter of a Jewish woman who fled Poland, yeah, I appreciate you being here today. And let's see. And do we have any other participants who would like to share some of their thoughts? Shauna, hi, nice to see you.
Thank you. My name is Shauna, and when I heard the elders speak today here, what came up for me was just noticing the wound of not having choices and the damage that does. And I live in the United States, and coming from a country that values freedom, and yet there's this history and of the way the Indigenous people were treated, where choices were taken away, choices on many levels, and just the wounding and the hurt from that. And then also noticing just how our systems are in the whole world that take away choices. You know, so my hope is that as we birth this new world and as we evolve, that each person will have choice and resources to truly express who they are. And I just think that will bring big healing. So I thank you.
Thank you, Shauna, for your share. If there's anyone else we haven't heard from, I really encourage you to raise your hand. Yes, we have Adrian. And if you could unmute yourself, Adrian.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hello. My name is Adrian, and I also feel profoundly grateful for this space and the deep sharing and weaving of wisdom. And yeah, what's really alive in my heart is this longing to acknowledge and to contribute to healing. I am from Germany. I'm from Europe, and really sensing into the pain that my ancestors and this system of oppression has caused is really heartbreaking and calls me into responsibility. And I really resonated with this question that Ukumbwa shared of what is really helping and how can I pierce through my savior hero model of transformation and really help to break through the concrete for our collective liberation. And I feel humbled, and I want to really do this inner work of facing the colonialization that is still also in my system and that I reproduce with my actions and my behaviors and my mindsets, and really work together for collective healing and transformation. And I thank you for this space, and thank you.
Thank you so much, Adrian, for stepping up and really being a model to other European men. And do we have any other people today who are here who would like to share a little bit of their thoughts, their feelings, their reactions to our speakers? Okay, we have a hand. And Ms. Amani, I'm just going to ask just before we come to you, just to see if we have anyone who hasn't shared yet who would be interested in sharing a little bit. Going once, going twice. Ms. Amani, yes.
I was very thankful, Grandmother Patricia, for your breaking it down into how just some things to continue to consider and to continue to unpack. I appreciate that a lot. And I would be interested, I don't know if this is appropriate to this process, but I often think about power over paradigms and how to simplify this very huge world situation. And so the way I have described it for myself is that these power over paradigms give a toxic mimic to that power from within. And clearly these are modern words. And I just, that resonance, that way that I've been thinking has been inspired, particularly in the stages that you spoke of, and how to go into that a little bit deeper. And I'm finding myself wanting to hear your thoughts around this kind of commentary, but I'm recognizing that may be out of place. So I just want to say thank you. A lot of this is inspiring how to move forward, how to take action in my day-to-day life. And I think that that's ultimately our ability to respond is in those day-to-day practices. And so thank you.
Patricia, if you have a short answer for Amani, go ahead and come on. And
she wanted to know how do we undo this power over, well, a blamer and a bully always going to set, and a perpetrator definition is always going to set up the victim to fail in order to collect, to say, well, you owe me. And that is fraud. So it's systemic. What I said about equality is we're all earth, water, fire, air within the earth, water, fire, and air fundamentally. So that is our identity. And then that is only the recalibration and reconfiguration within us and around us that we just do our own part, because and ask others to inspire and motivate them to do their part. We can only do our part. And if we were doing our part collectively overnight, we could do the real change, because it happens from within outward, not from outside in. That's what is a reframe. We can't reform anything morally, ethically wrong and inhumane. So let's hear what Shauna has to say to us. I see her hand.
And Shauna, if you could unmute yourself, please.
Okay, thank you for letting me speak again. I needed to bring clarity to what I said so I feel complete. When I was speaking of the United States, how they were treating the indigenous people, I'm also including in that the African American people who were also robbed of their choices to not even be here, to be taken from Africa and their homeland. And I just want to acknowledge that and the damage that has done. And I've been so glad in this Peace Week. There's been many African American presenters and presenters from Africa and from their countries. And I just want to say that I don't know how to put words to it, but there's something in the cultures there. I feel a great nobility. There's a nobleness to your cultures. And so that's all. Thank you.
thank you, Shauna. We are going to head now back into hearing from the elders, and then we'll have another sharing circle come up back after that. And so I would like to present Elder Brother Ukumbwa, and I will ask him to come in and introduce himself. I think he already did so, but I would like you to address our topic at hand and share what comes to your heart in this circle. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mari, and thank you to all the people who have entered their thoughts and feelings and ideas into the sharing circle. As an African, the idea of call and response is really important, that we make a call to hear from you and that you respond to that is important. So thank you for stepping into that circle with us. One of the things that came to mind in heart is something that was said by Indigenous activist and many other things, Lisa Bruner. And one of the statements that she made once is, and probably many, many times, is that the oppressors treat women like they treat the earth. You know, that there is a rape culture and exploitation culture that is similar, if not the same, in how the racist patriarchal system relates to, you know, African, Indigenous, BIPOC women and the earth herself. And I think we need to understand how profound that is. Now, Lisa Bruner's obviously not the only woman who ever spoke about that. And there are some really great books done by Carolyn Merchant and Susan Griffin that talk about that same dynamic. But it's a reality that women and others have shared with us that's important in understanding not only how European colonialism, patriarchal and racist colonialism, affects humanity, but what are the steps that we can start to see and how we remediate that and how we heal that. All right. And I always have to bring us back to the doctrine of discovery. I always have to bring us back to the root of this disintegration from indigenous culture, indigenous traditions, that was brought forth through some of the ideation, the fantasy ideation that came out of Christianity, particularly Roman Catholicism. And I spell that Roamin, because the Catholics said they were going to go around the globe and they, you know, and win every soul over to Jesus Christ. Okay, so there's something very non-consensual, something very exploitative, and I just call it predatory about that. So within that context of these papal bulls that created this concept of terra nullius, that any body of land that was not already controlled by a Christian prince, and that's the word they use, already patriarchy right in the center of it all, could be taken over by Christian conquerors, and done with, and the people can be subjugated, though terra nullius is a dehumanization process, is saying that if you're not Christian and you're on this land, you're not human enough to be validated as humans, and we can do whatever we want with the land. We can do what we want, you know, what we want to you. So when we look at how the doctrine of discovery that was defined by these papal bulls was not only accepted by, let's just say, every single Christian denomination that ever came out of Europe, but that it was also part of the creation, as it has been said earlier, the creation of racism, how we dehumanize people and how we codify people, and how we, or how European colonialism does this. I don't want to generalize where there is no need to generalize, you know, it to the whole population. It's actually a problem. You know, when many people say, and particularly white people will say, you know, European people will say, oh, you know, humankind are so awful. And many times I say, well, let's look at who's creating the systems of this degradation and exploitation. We can look historically to a group of people that are still lording over that situation. So nonetheless, we look at the doctrine of discovery and how that dehumanized people, and how the system of a predatory Christian concept started to disintegrate indigenous peoples from their integrative conceptions of their lives with the land, with the waters, with all the elements, with the ancestors. All right. And how important this is to understand as we seek to be better allies, better advocates, and to look into our own process of liberation. We must understand how deeply embedded these conceptions, again, of a predatory Christianity and a system of racism and patriarchy that is so dangerous to indigenous and African women all around the world, you know, women of color everywhere, and how that disintegrated us from, again, these systems of spirituality that helped us to stay in balance, as Elder Patricia was talking about, that help us to stay in balance not only with each other, but with the earth and the animals, the finned ones, the four-leggeds, all of life itself, even the planets, you know. And I kind of laugh when I see white men going up in, phallic-shaped rockets into space and think they're doing something profound. That is not also oppressive. Okay, but again, this whole integrative nature that indigenous culture had developed over, I'll just say, millions of years. If we go by what Louis Leakey was saying, when he found the 3 million-year-old body of so-called Lucy in Africa, and if we look at how long human culture has been developing, and again, we would not be alive today if those early humans had been innocuous so-called cave people. We would not be here today. We would just be in the bellies of saber-toothed tigers, and the world would have moved on. We came in with an understanding of our connection to all that is, and we lived in balance with that to the best of our ability, and kept that balance until European colonialism came along. So when we see how racism has undercut this integrative nature, and the word disintegration has become important to me, that we're actually pulled from these traditions, we're separated from these traditions. And we know in the African experience, when you're separated from your culture, separated from your people, in the system of chattel enslavement, when you would be pulled away from the people that were your family, from your tribes, from your nations, that this horror, it's absolute horror, it's absolutely trauma-inducing, and that the process of our healing is that reintegration not only with our cultures but with our ancestors. One of the things that I've seen about European culture and now white culture is that white culture killed their ancestors twice. It happened when the European colonialism, Christian colonialism, destroyed, not completely, but destroyed indigeneity within Europe. And thank goodness for the Sami people and so many people, keeping the Celtic and Norse and other traditions alive today. But they died then. They died once. Those ancestors, they died. They're still here. But they died again when whiteness showed up, when they were now forgotten and left into the dust of the past. One of the things that European people can do to re-Europeanize and decolonize themselves is to re-enter the spaces of your ancestors, the histories, the stories, the cultures, the traditions, and know that whiteness is a fleeting thing, that racism is a fleeting thing, that patriarchy, though it's older than racism, can be made fleeting by the men who are weaponized within patriarchy. That's our job to do, okay? Plain and simple. But that racism, as we see it, is something that is deeply connected to our relationship to land and to the elements. And if we look deeply into those disintegrated relationships, we start to see what we need to reintegrate. And the system of racism says that whiteness is a power into itself, and it is a power into itself, and it's a destructive power. It's not only destructive to people of color, indigenous people from all over the world, but it's destructive to white people too. Because without the ability to go back to your ancestors, the ability to heal those relationships, to unearth again those traditions that created your space, your indigenous space within Europe, before you started to destroy all the timber and the lands in Europe, which created the destruction of all the old growth forests in New England when the Europeans got here. Okay. That's why so many of the forests are shorter than they should be, because the trees are younger. Because one of the first things that the European settlers did, was cut down all the trees, send them back to send them back to Europe because they'd already decimated the forest there. So we can see how the destruction of our indigenous selves was the beginnings of the desacralization of the earth itself. And if we do not love a thing, if we do not see a thing, a being, an element as sacred, we will destroy it. And we see how, you know, through the work of the writer Jackson, oh my goodness, Jack D. Forbes, in his writing about Wedico disease in his book, Columbus and Other Cannibals, we see how that destructive nature that European society brought is now bubbling up in oppressed people everywhere to sign on to the system of domination because it thinks it's the only system that exists, and it's not. So we have a lot of work to do around in different ways as people oppressed by racism and people who are complicit with racism and who benefit from racism. But that we have work to do, and you know, that context that Elder Patricia gave us is powerful. The context and the work that Elder Kunkanku gave us is powerful to start to look into that. But we have to continue to mine these areas, to look to our ancestors, to bring us forward into a future that is much more powerful than we can ever even understand. Because as most indigenous peoples, in different ways, know that without their ancestors, there is no rooting into the earth. There is no roots that, again, we come into fruition as a culture, as a people with, into the systems of love and harmony and peace that we have known on the earth and with the earth. And that's our challenge these days, not only with our ancestors, but to rehumanize each other as we look at each other, look into ourselves, out through this system of dehumanization and desacralization that European colonialism is. So we've got a lot of really deep inner work there, and we have to be able to stop these systems again, like we again very quickly, as Elder Patricia spoke to. You know, these corporations that exist, and remember, the corporations have names. We can say it: Monsanto, Nestle, ExxonMobil, plenty of them. That they are benefited by the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, and international banking. Capitalism, racist system. Okay, racist system. We can look at what the Dole Corporation did in Hawaii. We can look at what Dole and other corporations did, helped out by people in the US Senate to undercut democratically elected Arbenz in Guatemala years ago. Okay, we can look at that. We can look at the history and say, this is exactly how European colonialism, capitalism, and racism and patriarchy have affected the world that we live in now. But we have to see ourselves again through that concrete of oppression. We have to be able to align with that those natural systems, those ancestral traditional systems of liberation and peace and justice that we know exist and that are inside of us, that we need to connect to and connect to each other on. Thank you. Thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you, Ukumbwa. You know, I want to say some very quick things about this, and I don't know if I mentioned them in another workshop or not, but the church system of othering people, othering as far as witchcraft, what went down there really? If you start studying this, and I actually have a certificate in this particular issue, but if you start studying this, you'll find out that many of the women that were accused of being witches were actually women that had lost their husbands that owned land. And if someone accused them of being witches, the church was allowed to seize their land instantly. And so it became something of a land seizure. Also, in the beginning of the church, how it was designed, there was a precedent in culture that only the firstborn inherited all the father's or the mother's, the family's property. And when they had other sons that came in, they didn't know what to do with them because they had no livelihood, they had no nothing. And so they sent them to the church. When they sent them to the church began its land acquisition processes. So those sons, in a sense, could get land. So if you start learning these fine points, you'll start seeing that perhaps this was not originally a spiritual drive that was happening, but perhaps it was something that had a different agenda. And so that's what I wanted to bring forth in what Ukumbwa was talking about, to give a little more context to some of that. We have another speaker coming up, Chise Ajay, a dear friend of mine. Will you share your experiences and insights with our circle today on colonialism, racism, and capitalism, and what you would like to bring forth along those lines, and the healing that it could come from our ways of seeing it, how to transform things. Thank you so much, sister, and please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Olarisha Chigonsase Adetunde, and I am a child out of the House of Ukumbwa and the House of the Golden Leaf in Bahia, Brazil. Ukumbwa in Cuba. And I grew up walking around on Tongva, Chumash, and Cahuilla land, which is Los Angeles and surrounding areas. I want to thank everybody here today. This has been so moving. This past month has been very moving for me because my godmother from Brazil has been here. And so this is the cap to a lot of very deep thinking and deep ceremony for me, as far as, you know, how to move forward spiritually, and also to be, what I hear a lot in our conversation is, how are we going to be effective? What are we actually going to do? What on the ground, what does this look like? And I wanted to address a few things, and I wanted to say thank you, especially to Grandmother Patricia, for really speaking about, for me, how language shapes thought. And thought shape, as we know, I think most of us who are practicing any kind of indigenous, system, understand that thought shapes action. So language, thought, and action are on a continuum of connectivity. I think one of the things, because a lot of my time has been spent with the children that we spoke of that are here now, that are the future. And I continue to do that because I have, young adults in my life, and do consider motherhood to actually be a spiritual path. I think one of the ways we move away from the invasive thought patterns of the invaders, and I like that Grandmother Patricia calls a thing a thing, and in the way of Confucius, it's the beginning of wisdom to call things by their proper names. This was an invasion. It is still an invasion. And what we are doing now is we're looking at ways to cure ourselves of the diseases that have been created by an unnatural system. And those ways start with the changing of how we think, which can be difficult if you're using a language, as Grandmother Patricia says, which is a language of commerce and acquisition. This is why when the enslavement of all these various peoples from Africa happened on these shores, language had to be beaten out of us, because as long as we were thinking in the languages that were our mother tongues, we were still calling forward that connectivity that was anathema to what the system that was being established or seeking to be established by the doctrine of discovery. The doctrine of discovery being, as Ukumbwa said, go forth, any land that's not owned by a Christian prince, seize it and subdue the people. In fact, they're not really people because they're not Christians. Okay, so I think when I was thinking about the connectivity of racism, sexism, and the environment, I think when we're talking about rehumanizing ourselves, in the best way. And that is, the first step is to take control of the narrative, take control of the language. It doesn't necessarily, mean speaking another language, but examining how we think in a language that is accessible to us, whichever language we think in. We may think in several languages, but we have to examine how we move and create concepts within the language. The second is how we take control of the languages by connecting the dots. And those dots are how we engage cultural and linguistic memory. Because any of us who are over 40 have had to deal with, I think a lot of us have observed history being rewritten while we're standing there, right while we're standing on the block. The left turn was made, the cars hit, and on the news that night, it's, oh, they didn't really hit. They scraped each other. We are standing and watching history being rewritten while history that we have witnessed. So that's one of the things. It's as simple as me saying to my daughter what was said to me. It didn't happen that way. I was there. It didn't happen that way. And you have to understand, I think, essentially, we are being made sick by a multi-conglomerate, Monsanto, GlaxoSmithKline, whoever is control of the big pharma, F-A-R-M-A, and big P-H-R-M-A. We are being made sick, and we are also being sold the pill for, so this is a protection racket. Hey, looks like your car's in danger, lady. For $5, I can watch it for you. And part of it is we just say no and say it doesn't go down like this. Let me explain to you what's going to happen. I'm going to go in this building, leave my car here. When I come out, my car is going to be here, or else it's going to be you and me. And it may not necessarily be me throwing you in the dirt, but me wrecking your reputation so badly that nobody wants to deal with you. Me taking you out of commercial viability. All of a sudden, you don't have the money to work with that you thought you had to work with before. And that is a viable option, and we need to understand. Mari, thank you so much for sending me. One of my favorite people is Dr. Vandana Shiva, and the thing that you sent me this week, it was so lovely. Vandana Shiva, I don't know how to say. She's a philosopher. I don't know for how many of you would know of her, but one of my favorite things that she has done was when Monsanto went to patent basmati rice in India, she said, I don't think so. And she took Monsanto to court and she won. And that doesn't sound like a big deal, but what we need to remember is that part of our success is being able to control the narrative, to be able to count when we win. Because if we listen to the invaders, all we do is lose, and we don't exist, because it is a hex that is being laid. Hexation is nothing but what we call in Yoruba, ofo. Ofo is bad mouth. If you say something enough, it will become true. That is the belief. And what we're saying is, oh no, It did. When you say it doesn't happen like that, what you're really doing is interrupting and throwing a wrench in the hex. So what we don't want to do is we don't want to engage in hexation. So this is why we say to our children, you're so bright. You're so wonderful. I believe in you. You have such a bright future ahead of you. And right now, the things that you're engaged in are supporting that future. And these are things as adults we need to be saying to each other. Let's count all the times that we won. Well, how do we do that? It seems like we lose all the time. If we lost all the time, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you. There would be nothing. Okay? If we lost all the time. If we lost all the time, nobody would be in this room because we are not supposed to be talking to each other. The design of the invasion is that we were supposed to be at each other's throats. If we were talking at all, okay? What I had to explain when my godson came to me this week and said, yeah, I'm having a hard time. It's the 5th anniversary of my father's death, and I think I need to talk to somebody. I said, let me tell you something. We will find somebody for you to speak with who is licensed. But let me say something to you right now. You are doing well because you are here. You are a man of a certain age. You have your head on straight. You're not on drugs. You are paying your bills. You're not in jail. I had to list those things that he has accomplished because I knew I needed to change the narrative that was swimming around in his head. Because the narrative is a spell. When someone tells you you don't exist, and they say it over and over again, and that you don't count, and they're telling you that, and they set up a system that says you don't count, it inevitably, that hex leads to what? Alcoholism, drug abuse, of variant different kinds of fentanyl, methamphetamine, name. So what we are doing here, I'm saying, is we are changing the narrative by merely showing up. And then we're going beyond that to listing ways in which we can go out and engage within our communities and have that rippling effect. That's why I appreciate all of you so very, very much, for the individual work that you're doing and the work that we are doing together. And I wanted to say something else about compartmentalization, because that is something else that is anathema. This connectivity, everything needs to be connected. We need to get up in the morning connecting things and go to bed at night connecting things. Because what it takes to overturn this erosive and corrosive thought pattern is a constant vigilance within our own spheres. One of the things that I appreciated about the second thing that I appreciated about Dr. Vandana Shiva is, aside from beating Monsanto, was that she did her I think she did her thesis on non-local connectivity, quantum connectivity. The best way that I can explain that is 2 particles get separated and moved across the world from each other. One particle engages and starts spinning, is caused to spin in one direction, and the particle across the world that has been separated from it also begins that spin. That doesn't sound like much on a quantum level. But we are the quanta. And I think we need to remember that we are the quanta. It is this thing that allows mothers like me, when I was a new mother and I had to be across town working, to call my mother on the phone and say, the baby is awake. How did I know? I don't know how I knew that, but she would go in the room and my daughter would be waking up. That is not a miracle. That is how all of us are meant to function. All we have to do is remember that. When I think of Cynthia, or I think of Mari, or I think of Martin, or Ukumbwa, there is a meditative place that we are able to access through most of our methodologies, indigenous methodologies, that allows us to tune in, to know exactly, to touch each other. A friend of mine told me once, she had been a psych nurse for 30 years, and she said, you know what, there's really only one of us here. And everything that has been set up in this system is a counterfeit of what is actually meant to be going on. Our telephone is a counterfeit of our internal apparatus that is designed for us to be able to internally, telepathically communicate with each other. You know, the television is, you know, yet another thing that allows us to see, but we have the capacity to show each other certain things psychically. Almost everything that we are engaged in technologically that is from the outside in, indigenously happens from the inside out. I really want to express again my appreciation for all of you. This has been a wonderful journey, and I really hope that we are able to continue to build out in whatever forms that we choose. But I also want to leave you with the fact that we are winning merely because we are connected, and to the degrees that we stay connected, we continue to win. And this false paradigm cannot stand against the natural cosmic order. Thank you so much, and I'll return you to the center.
I love it. I was going to bring up some things while you were speaking, but I love the way you ended that because it really capped it. So I'm hoping everybody holds on to that energy while I speak. What she said just now was beautiful. She spoke about some of the things, history being rewritten here. If no one knows, in the last few months, Texas has passed laws to remove Martin Luther King, all women, and all Native Americans from the history books. And teachers are now allowed not to teach any of those things. And do keep in mind that in Texas, we make all our books that are for circulation all over the United States. So things are being rewritten as we sleep. And I mean sleep. As we acquiesce. And I want to go back to what Chise said about really recapitulating what we're telling to ourselves, the narrative. Now, the thing is, we need to, as we all know, see what is wrong and really root that out. And at the same time, know what the truth is about our being, which Patricia speaks on so much, and I'm sure she'll come in later to be talking more, but the truth of our being, and then clear out that which is not real, and then go on to tell and enforce the truth within ourselves, and also to buttress up and hold up those youth so they can have a sense of what is real within their being. And so I am now passing to our talking circle, and we shall go back into sharing. And I'm hoping that everyone will come forth and have a lot to say. We really welcome you. And I pass to Cynthia.
Thank you, Mari. Wow, this has been just beautiful. And so encourage people to raise a hand who would like to share some of their thoughts, reflections, and we'll give, again, give about a minute to each person and to try to really maintain a balance so that everyone who would like to speak is heard and listened to. Is that a hand, Maham? Hi. Could you unmute yourself, please? There you go.
Thank you for the circle, Mari, and everybody else. Thank you for all the wisdom keepers. It really had to take me a while to kind of digest what I had to hear. We all have some really deep thoughts about this paradigm and this colonization. I myself have quite experiences. I'm from Iran. I was born in Iran. My name is Maham Ziavash. I'm actually come from two indigenous tribes of Iran. My mom is she's a Kurdish Egyptian, and my father is from the northern regions of Iran. And I know you probably have heard of the news, what has been happening. And, I'm also against the colonization, and I know the country I was born, it was established by millions of years by Anunnakis and the star beings, and they came and they colonized, and they programmed people, and our culture was pretty much built into that. And the country I was born was basically colonized by different dynasties and different kings and queens, and just it's been really reshaped our culture, whether it was good or bad. But I'm really disappointed of how we humans have developed how to be, in a way, suppress different tribes. Even I'm also very against the type of belief systems of suppressing women. That's it's been ongoing. I'm seeing it in different religions, and it's constantly getting suppressed. And now, the country I was born, now the suppression is so strong that now they're literally killing women. And it's been very emotional for me. And something I've also noticed that too, at the very beginning of 2021, I've noticed there's going to be, there's been this energy on Earth. There's just this havoc of just the Earth is just making voices, anywhere from.
And Mahan, out of respect, if we could wrap up for this round, just so that others could come in. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much for sharing about what's going on in your country. And do we have others? I know some people kind of came in late. Anyone who hasn't spoken yet, first off, who would like to share? People drop in who weren't here at the beginning.
Also, before Imani, possibly, she's raising her hand, maybe Chise or Grandmother Patricia that is already she's temporarily gone, might want to make a comment about women or something. Do you have anything you want to add to that, Chisay?
Yes, I've been observing what's going on in Iran. I don't know how many people know that a young woman was arrested by the morality police for, it wasn't that she wasn't wearing her hijab, her veil, but they said she wasn't wearing it properly. And she ended up somehow dead in custody. And the whole country is really kind of coming apart at the seams behind this action of the morality police. I think we're dealing with, you know, people are fed up, and people are realizing that these are our daughters, these are our mothers, you know, and the situation is forcing people to take a stand, not just in Iran. I think that's where we're seeing it now, but around the world. We have to remember a lot of things have happened this year, you know, that seem to be not connected, but that actually might be, you know, the death of Shinzo Abe, the former prime minister of Japan, this particular situation, the ousting of the Sri Lankan prime minister by people, just the people of Sri Lanka just essentially rushed the palace and said no more. You know, so there's all of this energy moving around the planet, and it is people really trying to take control of their narrative. And so we see this happening, you know. I'm going to give it back to Cynthia because I want everybody to have a chance to speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. All right. Let's see. Ms. Amani.
Women, life, and freedom is the slogan, the words, the concept that the women are chanting. And one of the things in the article that I read about was how those three words are moving across all aspects of the culture and calling many people who are not in agreement with many things together. And you know, that's, for me, that's what our time is. That's why I'm here. That's, you know, I think that's why we're all here, is to find the connection. You know, for me as a modern person, it's like I didn't, you know, I figured it out through the blessings of Babatunde Olatunji and several others who took me under their wing and asked me to walk beside him as a helper. And I was lucky enough to say yes, and to be lucky enough to collaborate with people in my own sort of field of wonder, which is music and drumming and dancing. And I think that what I was called to say is that validation is a superpower for our times. If we can validate how someone feels, whatever that might be, then that opens the door to this place of reframing. That opens the door to the place of humans understanding that we are all earth, air, fire, water. And if we can just break it down to that simplistic, you know, that's how I am approaching, because it's like, where are the languages of commonality? I find them in music. I find them in art. I find them in nonverbal communication. And so, yeah, and I say thank you and pass the feather back to the circle. Thank you for inviting me in.
Thank you. And Debbie G.
I'm not Debbie G. Go ahead, Debbie.
My apologies. I'm just reading what's on the screen.
Oh, there we go. Thank you. Thank you for this gathering. Thank you for everyone that's here. And opening up the hearts and connecting to the mind. You know, a couple of weeks ago in Iran, I need to say Allah Akbar, mayhem. The Baha'is of Iran were bulldozed out of their homes. That happened before the hijab and the woman being murdered. But in those teachings, it's the unity of humankind. And it's also in the teachings of women and their role. And so here in that country, they're really trying to suppress what's going on. As Abdul Baha said, the world of humanity has two wings. One is woman and the other man. Not until both wings are equally developed can the bird fly. Should one wing remain weak, flight is impossible. Not until the world of women becomes equal to the world of men in the acquisition of virtues and perfections can success and prosperity be attained as they ought to be. And so at that deep, deep level right now, all over the planet, all over Mother Earth, we're seeing that, you know, gotta continue. They're here in this country, they're really writhing away to make the woman's voice invisible again. But we're all working together, so we're blessed to be together today, being little seeds, drops in the ocean. Glitch.
Thank you so much. And now I'd like to hear from Shauna.
I really appreciated hearing about the positive narratives, how important that is, that we are winning. And I think that's why it's so important we have events like this, workshops like this, Peace Week, and all those wonderful events, so that the narrative does get out there that we are winning. Because I think sometimes, you know, too much of things or sometimes too much news, get a little sidetracked from knowing that we're winning. And as it's been spoken by our elders here, how important it is to pass on that narrative of winning to the youth, because we do need to keep hope alive, and hope is very real and very powerful. I am going to have to leave early. I apologize and give thanks for the session. And I also wanted to say, Maham, I was enjoying your thoughts, your last thought about the earth seems to be speaking because of everything that's happening. And, you know, when we have workshops, sometimes because of timing, we may have to say that we have to wrap things up. But I hope you know that that means you can still finish your thought and add a sentence. And so I just wanted to pass that along. Thank you, love to you all.
Yes, thank you, Shauna. And absolutely second that. And Patricia.
If it's okay with you all, I'm traveling, and I have time agenda of my host. I may have to leave at 4:30 or a little bit later, and I was just gonna ask if I could say a few things. And ordinarily, when I'm at home, I like to respect all the speakers and stay completely to the end. So just asking if that's okay, because it was suggested that Maham be given the floor again to speak. So just wanted to interject that. That's okay. And
Yes,
Mari. All right. This is for everyone, and of course, it's always my emptying because I've been a researcher and an educator all of my life to figure out how is it that I'm going to follow my father's how he put me in this path, how he put me where it was up to me to figure out how am I going to go about it. And so Ms. Imani was asking me about the how to, and I'm just going to give a brief suggestion that I tell people that we can start a conversation in our family, in our work, in our community. We can ask the question, we can suggest, we can say, would you like to have a conversation about win-win, constructive and life-affirming decisions for those outcomes? It's a values clarification question that is at a very realistic and practical level to ask people, do you know what win-win decision making is? And so on. And this is exponential because it's pure education. So I wanted to say that to her, just to follow, and to everyone to follow up on when the question is asked, how do we change the whole world environment? And I said, well, we start with ourselves and those around us. And that way we can depend on the fact that our conscience and moral reasoning is built within us, in every person, and will resonate to someone and recognize it, especially the youth. They will say, oh, I always knew that. Well, thank you for validating me, or something like that. Okay, and then I'm going to move on to how am I going to pronounce your name? It's spelled Ukumbwe.
Ukumbwa. Ukumbwa.
Yes, and this talking specifically about the abuse of women is correlated to the abuse of the earth, that the rape and exploitation by hierarchy, by patriarchy, by power over, and how it's connected to the doctrine of discovery is, first of all, there is black ink on white paper. People believe that if you write it down, Europeans believe that if you write it down, it makes it true. So there is a charter of, quote, liberty. Look how ironic this, of liberty. It's the first laws out of the Vatican for the ownership of land and property, and women were included in property. That is still existing today on this domination submission vocabulary that is still within our systems level and community society level. And then following that, so that's the land and property. And then following that is the charter of the forest, which is the doctrine of discovery, of right of discovery of pagan land. And that then officially then says, well, you're that's where we say, well, I'm the chosen one and you're not. So I get to, that gives me the justification and the permission to devalue and dehumanize you. So then he also brought up this concept of wetiko. Also, we were naming corporations, and I'd like to include Chevron, because Chevron in the Amazon was, I have the name of the lawyer, but I can't really pronounce it right now. He filed suit against Chevron for the indigenous people, and he won. And there was a countersuit, and he was then charged and also imprisoned and jailed and discredited. So we need to know that don't buy your gas at Chevron. That's what we do is we don't continue to sacrifice ourselves. So tying this word, he brought up that book, Wetiko, Columbus, and Other Cannibals. So that's a very good resource for understanding. And I'm hearing these words about Wetiko in every tribe, the Lakotas, every tribe has a word for what the meaning of it. Our word is chiti, which is just basically saying that someone who vampires and devours your life force. We could even call the IRS that they are the devourers, and we've heard of narcissistic supply, using women as narcissistic supply. That our very life force is in this grand betrayal story used as taking our life force and our life energy all the way to the breath to take us all the ways of taking us out of the body and eliminating us. And so it's connected to the words of hexation, the hex and the spell, the wetiko, and also I'm going to call it also living spirit's curse. That means that someone intentionally directs hatred, envy, jealousy, especially jealousy. You have something I don't have, so I have to destroy you to get it. I even have to kill you to take it away from you. And along those lines, it's not true that someone is in that condition of this higher, more, and someone else is less than, and so on. In the Diné culture, this circle from east, south, west, north, this natural order circle, it's a person is a jewel. And even in English, if we're saying white people, that's white shell, and red people, that's turquoise, and yellow people, that's abalone shell from the ocean west and to the north, obsidian or jet. So every person is a jewel born equally within the whole circle. So in the language, there's no possibility of anybody being higher or lower. Each person is this jewel for this equality, and so on. So back to this living spirit's curse, connecting to racism, that is a intentional living spirit's curse. Now, when it's a group of people, they don't have to know you. They just know your name, who you are, and they're all equally sending this dehumanizing and devaluing people. Where then it's called a group living spirit's curse. So calling it what it is in all these terms is saying that it can no longer, we're dispelling, dismantling, we're deconstructing. And I loved what was said about the natural cosmic order does support, the creator does not destroy its own creation. So we're totally, fully supported that what is fraud, what is fraudulent, what is corruption, what is deviousness and deception, and so on. Even the defiance and the denial, that's not supported. So that's how we wake our people up, that we're totally free from these chains and of racism and capitalism and imperialism and all of these words that we have been supposed to be afraid of. Well, I'm the grandmother who was the out of control child, teenager, spouse, employee. There was money and fear could never control me. So those are ways that I wanted to just speak before we, so that we can learn. Also, their question too was where's the language of community? Let's learn it together and practice it And that's the practical and realistic way to speak accordingly, because the clan system, the tribe has been made derogatory, as if we're the ones always fighting. No, it's about our belonging and encouraging one another in this extended family and into our humane family. So I'll close there. And when I leave, then it's because I'm being called elsewhere, because I'm in the timeline of my host and the agenda here. But I love you all, and thank you so much for listening and hearing these words, and also teaching the young people whenever and wherever you can. Our everyday life is a ceremony. We don't say, well, it has to be this way with a fire, and it has to be this way, and all the ritual. No, we're living. Hojoja ceremony is living the loving way as a way of life. Thank you.
Thank you, Patricia. I have some things to say later about this, but I want to see if there is anyone else that would like to speak. And thank you, Patricia. That is beautiful. And we will be having Patricia in the future on to share her wisdom. So keep in with us, and you will find out more later. Would anyone else like to say anything at this point?
Deepmoot has her hand up.
Yes, I wanted to say something. I don't understand all in English, but I wanted to tell you what I understood is, or what I have to say to what I understood. All the wars, the colonization, all what happened, it makes a split from ancestors. Many told it was make a split from contact to other people. It makes a splitting us from ourselves, and we are losing the contact to ourselves, and we are losing our spirit too. And in this space, there's coming fear. And what Patricia says, I make it very short, it's the one language we can learn is the language of compassion that I believe in. We are all human beings, and we all need the same. We need to be loved, we need to be good treated, and so on. And language of compassion, let our heart talk. If our heart is talking, we are feeling us as one. Okay. No. And in this way, you have the possibility to get out of the fear all this bring to us. You try to go inside you and try to be authentic again. And with this authenticity, you take the responsibility for yourself and for everything around you. Okay, that is all I want to say. Thanks.
And thank you, Deepmoot. And I did want to also check with Mahan if he had any more he would like to share. And just wanted to let you know my intent was not to cut you off, but just kind of give a reminder of minding the time. Okay. And, and if Mon didn't have more for us.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Oh.
Sorry, I got distracted.
That's okay. Mahan, I was just inviting you if there was anything that you didn't get to share that you wanted to share, and just wanted to say my apologies. My intent was not to cut you short, but just was giving a reminder of minding
That's
the
okay.
time.
That's okay. I totally understand. Excuse me. No, I just I think I did what I had to say. It's just for the past couple of years, I've noticed that the energy of the earth has been so intense, and there's just been so much going on earth as far as like energy wise. So, you know, there's been earth disaster, but also has been anything that we have put our energy into, it has intensified. Like if you have done chanting or practices of praying, it has intensified. It's more massive. The energy is more massive now. Even now, like what's happening in Iran, energy is so massive. It's people are, you know, everybody. It's globally. They can actually feel the energy. So. You know, from my understanding is keep doing what you're doing as far as like your healing, your chanting, your prayers, because this time of the year is the most intense energy of all, and you will feel it and you actually experience it. And, you know, I just wanted to be thankful of this circle to be here. I've probably in the past, Mari has invited me, but I just never had an opportunity, or maybe it wasn't the right time. But today was really great. I really appreciate for all the wisdom keepers and all the medicine people to be here and speaking their words from their heart. And I do really appreciate for keeping the circle. Thank you.
Thank you, Mahan. And I see we have one more hand. Let's see. Adrian.
Yeah, I really appreciate the circling around, and I feel very enriched by what's been shared, and also what's coming alive in me. And it feels like we're in this time where the old is really dying and crashing down, and we're moving into this chaos. And it seems like we're also called, or I feel also called to letting it die, like to let this way of how I produce violence, how we produce violence in Europe, to let that die and decompose. And while this is crashing down, at the same time align with what the life force that Mayam was also speaking to, like this powerful force of the earth that is also rushing through our cells, and that calls out to thrive and to move from this paradigm of separation that all of us, I think, have spoken to, into interbeing, and just remembering that, you know, the tapestry of life was always there, and if we open up to it, we can reweave it. And just feeling in this present moment how we're weaving together all of these different perspectives and life experiences into a more coherent whole feels very powerful. And I strongly feel that this is what you know, can emerge when our hearts and voices and actions come together. And I have many questions of how we can do that in practice, especially given that those institutions that represent the dominant systems are so strong and powerful and have all the military and resources, and how our movements can really crack through the pavement and create this life affirming future, and not only for us but for the present and future generations of all species. So yeah, I'm profoundly humbled and grateful to participate in this space. And thank you.
Yes, thank you, Adrian. Would any of our speakers like to respond? Mari?
Actually, I would like to do a little bit of speaking before we end. And the other thing is, esteemed grandmother Molly has sent, per my request, a message for us that I also want to share.
Wonderful. Yeah.
And this is backtracking a little, but it will catch back up. So this is for people listening that maybe have started to just get into this topic a little bit, but you know, racism has been used to justify so many schemes to acquire free goods, services, and fuel economic agendas. And really, this is too pretty of a way to say it, because it becomes really conceptual when we just talk about it, and we don't really relate to it. But actually, we need to look at these atrocities and horrors to see the depth of them. So it isn't conceptual, because when you do that, your heart breaks open and you really have an aha. And honestly, the scheming and disconnected heart that has fueled this land grabbing, killing, raping, and pillaging is a heart that has been torn asunder. And it has had to turn a blind eye to justify mass genocide, plundering, ecocide, and cruelty. It has had to feign its own superiority. It is no wonder that people feel anesthetized. To comply with this agenda in any way, even go along with it, you can ask Patricia about this. It's called coping. Or even to live through it, people have had to numb out. How could you feel this internal betrayal and then keep on living this way without shutting down? There is no way to do it. We have had to fly the flag of powerlessness and the flag of what we can do, or what can we do, excuse me, to just keep justifying this and going along with it. We've had to ask or implore someone else, like the supposed colonial leaders, to fix it. That is the colonial way, to make someone else our hero or father figure, like the founding fathers, and wait for them to act. We've coped with this denial by hiding from facts. Many white people say, don't look at race, just unify. Time and time again, I've heard Black people say that what I call this fake unify philosophy is unacceptable. Let me tell you why. Basically, when white people say, don't look at race, we should unify, this sends a message to people of color, firstly, that white people want to dictate how life should be seen and decide what should be gotten over and when. Second, since we are a human race that don't tend to treat people equally, and white people in general, if not more so the elite, have been positioned into a place of privilege and benefited from the stolen land as well as Black people's free labor. And we can go into other groups that have had free labor. We need to recognize these facts. We don't live in a vacuum. We need to deal with the realities of racism out in the outside world and what other races and nations go through. Looking at the corporate capitalist takeover of life, even if we don't see ourselves as being racist. Turning away does not correct the issue. Saying let's just unify is actually unacceptable, or even worse, claiming that Black people are racist because they bring up racism And what happens to them on a daily basis is not Black people being racist. And that was already talked about earlier. It would be different if everyone was treated equally and that none of these atrocities had happened or continue to happen. Embracing the shadow and calling out the problem and being willing to look at it and embrace other people's needs and opinions and worldviews is paramount. And that is what we exist for here. It is not an option if you want to claim you are not racist. Monoculture religion, as Ukumbwa has so many times pointed out in some of these workshops, has been used to both control and deny there are other possibilities besides the frame you're indoctrinated to look from. This is myopic. It keeps us from growing and experiencing true reality if we stop growing and think we have it all sewn up and know everything there is to know. Then we actually can't even be available for spirit to come through and tell us what is up. Obviously, it is no surprise that we find ourselves in this precarious position at this time. Indigenous people have lived in balance on the land for so long, while colonization has quickly and systematically ripped us from the root out of right relationship with each other, the seasons, and our bodily cycles, leaving us ungrounded and almost unable to recognize what is right, beautiful, and true. When one is unable to find their balance, it would make sense to look to the peoples and nations that come closer to holding the balance, and the ways that come closer, and the practices and views that facilitate this balance. Also look to the times when we were closer to being in that balance. And this is not about nostalgia. It takes great humility to both look past one's own belief system and modern conveniences, and to listen and learn and search out more responsible and congruent forms of understanding and action. I'm sure it would be a real wake-up call to have Congress go spend months, if not years, letting Indigenous people advise them, and then taking a back seat. I'm sure it would be similar to let all churches and corporations see that they need to do the same. Maybe we in our lives need to bring others to the forefront of leadership, as we attempt to do here, spending time going to their workshops and listening to them like you are doing today. Capitalism is not going to work, period. The premise is off balance. Profit making is not sustainable nor even sane. Amassing mountains of stuff while others are at the bottom is cruelty. Getting ahead in the system is counterintuitive and barbaric. Maneuvering oneself into a position of having control of all the resources is not acceptable and diabolical. And it comes from a hole in the heart. Supporting these companies or even persons in any ways is not sustainable nor wise. So how do we remove our support, like Chise was talking about? Further, this is not about someone here stealing all of what we're talking about and then becoming a social influencer and making money off of it, or professing these ideas as their ideas. This is not about grabbing and running with this so you can be the one that brings everything to the world, and not quoting people properly or consulting with others. This, frankly, is the old rotted steel wisdom. Run with it, become a personality to make a living colonialism model that does not honor eldership nor wisdom. Elder is not necessarily older. Older is not necessarily wise. We need to be honest with ourselves and expose our true motives and get on our knees. The thing is, we may need to give this way of living up quick. And most people don't seem to want to do that completely, or are too distracted or lazy possibly to do the work, or too busy straddling both worlds, paying bills to come up with a how. That said, this is not even exactly about getting equal access of resources within this capitalism model now, because capitalism has got to go. We are far beyond that at this point. So I just want us to each ask inside, how much are we willing to love to get to the other side of this? Are we going to wait until people are rioting, starving, everyone is out in a tent on the side of the road, or people with machine guns come to our door, fires are burning everything, mass flooding and extreme earth changes, all wildlife is dead, the ocean entirely covered with plastic? Or are we going to see the writing on the wall? Did you know that suicide and homicide now are the biggest killers of our youth, according to statistics? Of course that is, because we cannot live with ourselves. We've turned away from our nature. Are we willing to change everything and reevaluate the whole of it now and not just wait for others to get on board? Yes, we need to point out all the problems deeply, insightfully, and see their root. Then we have to get our bearings straight about what is right thought, right being, and right action. Then we need to get ourselves congruent with this. And finally, we need to see that this is not about talk only. This is about walk. Not just about prayer, but about congruency of being and action in all ways. Our beloved elder grandmother, Molly Hatkwa Gwen Theron, sends her message as she could not be here with us today. She says, Turtle Island is the Garden of Eden, and I would say, along with that, the whole planet. When the foreigners came in ships, everything was available. The indigenous people welcomed them generously, carried them, cleaned them up. Unlike the indigenous people, the foreigners bathed once a year. Our ancestors cured them from scurvy, provided them with shelter. Each of the succeeding generations did much the same, all the way up to today. It is time for reciprocity. Our ancestors have modeled this also into the present day. The world is seriously unbalanced in the taking, grabbing, and never having enough syndrome. It is time to take action, personal responsibility. Change takes place when common folks make change happen. The time is now. I believe in you, and I believe together we can make change happen. Thank you for your participation. With all my love, Grandma Molly. I would like to call for ceremony out. And I call to Chise to thank the ancestors.
Can everyone hear me? Oh, good. Okay, because I wasn't able to unmute. Emi majalo nio moforibale follow. We ask that the ancestors who have gathered and brought us together bless us and move us in an effective way as we move away from each other, carrying all those things that we have created with our heart in this moment in time, that we may spread all the enlightenment we've gathered from each other and continue to move forward. Ifa teaches us, you know, that Iwapele is the foundation, is the foundation. It is the foundation of good character. Iwapele, Ifaya, Egun, Fumini Ifaya, Fumni, Ire, Ila Alafia, Ogbon, Iwapele. May the ancestors bring us the blessing of good character, the blessing of enlightenment, the blessing of wealth, health, children, and beneficial spousal relationships. May we go forward, building together and separately so that we can create the new world that we envision together. Ashe, 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 sheho. Wonderful.
Cynthia, will you please thank the directions?
We express deep gratitude first to the elements, to the fire, the earth, the air, the water, thanking them for all of the gifts they've brought to our ceremony today. Thank you for connecting us all, and may you continue to connect us in a good way. Connect all of our works together. Thank you to all the directions for your seeds you've planted in your gifts. And I pass to the center.
And I pass to Deborah for your prayers.
Kichimana dum. Miigwech gadigon nemoshomes menawa nakomas jinago gayanin nongon iyanchik menawa wabang ki iajik. Miigwech manadug iajik nun denong iajik nibing iajik skoden menawa iajik aking. Miigwech manadug iajik gi widinong wabenong ja wanong menawa episen chimak. Daga bi we kawishnanag wimino bemadazeon. Weya hey wa weya weya hey weya. In komagia meshakome kwe hey 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 hey. Weya hey hey weya hey weya. In komagina meshakome kwe hey hey weya. Weya hey weya weya hey weya. In komagia meshakome kwe weya hey weya. Weya hey weya weya hey weya. In komagia meshakome kwe weya weya. Yo, Kaniganon. Great Spirit, we offer our prayers and thank you for the grandfathers and the grandmothers of yesterday, today, and tomorrow. Thank you, spirits of the winds, water, fire, and earth. Thank you, spirits of the north, east, and west, and south. Please help us to live a good life. And giving thanks to Mother Earth. All my relations.
All my relations, and I pass to Abba to close the circle.
Thanking and blessing all that join the sacred circle from the four directions. As we cleanse and purify ourselves in a good way, we close this circle, washing ourselves fully and completely with these medicines, bathing every corner of our energetic fields and into the beyond of our daily lives. As we reflect in the coming days on all the messages and prayers shared today, may our thoughts, words, and deeds reflect the good work of realigning our own relationships with Mother Earth and all forms of life upon her. The sacred circle is now closed. May we go out into the world wrapped in a blanket of love, light, and protection as we breathe new life into creation. All my relations.
All my relations. You are my relations. And ancestors of the four directions, hopes you will join us as we explore how we are going to make all things well and right. How we are going to get this to happen. Step by step, we can create congruency within and without, and live a life without regrets. One where we can look into the children's eyes and know we did all we could. Please join our mailing list. We have posted that in the chat. We are all in this together. And if you have a gift you would like to give in reciprocity for all that has happened here, we would welcome that so we can grow and be strong. We are all in this together. Once again, the links are in the chat. And we will now open the chat. So if you would like to post any messages or any, your address, your email address or anything, we can put you on the mailing list that way also. Thank you so much. We love you. And we ask that you're blessed. And if you are watching this on a video, if you would like and subscribe, we would really appreciate it. Many blessings. We need all of us to do this good work. All of us count. All of us are important. All of us are the vision of today and the future generations. All my relations.